everybody, welcome to Bonus Content for Workforce. And now I am sitting down with Jess Audsley for my episode of Corporate Stockholm Syndrome. And in particular, she is talking about her experience of getting bullied in the workplace by a horrible boss, just why that happened and what she actually did about it. Let's have a listen.
But I was in a workplace for 7 years. My background is in communications and PR. So I've done communications and PR for really big companies. And this was a big company. It was a part of a big company for 42,000 employees worldwide, where I was a part of about 5,500 big companies. So it was quite large. And the environment was very male driven. It was an industry that was very male driven. And I think this is the way the world looks for us. We think of, I'm based in Sweden, but I work internationally, and we think of the world as quite equal. And especially in Sweden, we want to talk about how equal we are. But the truth is, when you look at the data and the stats, it's not, and we're not. And I had a manager who, I think in hindsight, of course, one does a lot of sort of looking into it in hindsight. And I think that he couldn't handle the way that I am. I'm very ambitious. I take space. I speak, and I'm not afraid to do the job, basically, to get results. And that just didn't work. And the way that he handled that was by bullying, by using techniques that were, in hindsight, throwing people under the bus, throwing me under the bus, things like that. And it was a very toxic work environment. There was only one woman on the board of the company. Everybody else was male. Less than 10% of the managers were female, and so on and so forth. So it was a really tough situation to be in. It felt like going to war every day. In a sense that there was a lot of kind of adrenaline that went with kind of trying to work out strategies for how to cope in this environment and how to survive and how to be able to do my job. So it was really, really tough. And I built a sort of prison of my own mind where I believed that I couldn't leave. At the time, so this was a 7-year period, so it was quite a long time. So I went through IVF, and then I had twin girls, and I went on maternity leave. And then when I came back, naively thinking that things would have changed. But the truth is, you can't change a corporate culture. And I think that's really important in this conversation to underline that my advice to anybody who feels like they're a part of something like this is to leave, because nothing will change. It's not possible for you to do it. But I was banging my head against the wall, trying to change what I could, really believing in like the positive and that it was possible to make a difference. And really, honestly, it wasn't. In an organization like that, you either buy into it or you opt out. Those are the only options. So after my maternity leave, I went back naively believing that things could have changed, wanting them to change again, back to that mindset of wanting to change and making a positive impact. I realized that nothing was ever really going to change, and it was time to leave. And I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do, but I knew that if I could get a job doing the things that I was doing, then surely my skills would be worth something. So that's when I started my first business, which was in social media. And today I run an international digital marketing agency.
Wow.
And we have clients in Scandinavia, we have clients in the UK, we have clients in the US, and we're a full service agency. So we help clients with everything from branding to web to ads to social media and so on and so forth.
So you've really kind of taken the core of the role that you were doing in the previous occupation, and you've managed to create an environment, I'm guessing, where you really, really like the culture now. So some of the lessons of what not to do have come from the previous company.
Absolutely. Like, my driving force with starting this business was really to create an environment and a workplace and a team that has those values that are completely opposite of what I was in. So where I was, it was very much of like presenteeism was at its core. You show up, that means that you're doing the work, which is not true. Just because you show up doesn't mean that you're actually, having a valuable output. And we don't care. I don't care as a CEO where you work, how you do it, what times you do it, as long as you deliver with high quality and on time. And I believe that work doesn't need to be this way. I believe in a different kind of way of working. So I want people to feel joy when they work with us. I want them to feel like they're making a difference in our clients' businesses, which we are, and we're pushing that needle, and that gives me great satisfaction. So it's very different from the very corporate environment I was in to where I am now, where I'm allowed to create my own belief system and my own values, my own mission and vision of what I want to do.
Can I ask you, Jess, you used the term prisoner of your own mind when you described kind of staying in the company. And there was a few things that I picked up on when you were speaking. So obviously you were in a large company that obviously had probably quite a good brand that was visible to the outside world. And I'm guessing the corporate Stockholm Syndrome is more likely to happen in that situation where people might be attached to the brand, even if things inside aren't going so well. And you also mentioned that you thought things were going to change. And I'm curious about that, because I'm wondering if you thought things were going to change because you believed the people on the other side were fundamentally good, and that they just needed to be told what was going wrong. And once they realized it, once you told them, or two, whether or not it was that you really believed that as an individual, you could create the change, and it was something that you internalized as being important to you at that time, or whether it was something else.
I think I fundamentally am driven throughout my life, and not just in this role, but by a sense of what is right and what is wrong. So
Yeah.
I just believe in the good in people. You can't take that out of me. And that was what got me in trouble in this situation for like 7 years, believing that if you bring things to the table that are not working the way that they should, and we could do better, then people are going to pick up on that and want to change. And that's when I realized, and it sounds very silly in hindsight to take that it took me such a long time to realize this, but I was fighting. I was trying to get HR to understand that, this wasn't working out. And the truth was that I wasn't the only one who was in this situation. There was a small team with me, but slowly they all left. So they went into other departments. Somebody went into another job, but most people just left this manager and went to other departments. So I was kind of left on my own, which was also a very, very isolating experience. So I brought this to HR. I brought it to the CEO in the belief that when something isn't working and something is so clearly repairable and changeable, people are going to want to do that. And that is not my experience. My experience was that it was a situation where one wanted to shut down what was going on, and not really, that was not the priority. I was called a lot of things, but I was called a lot of good things, but I was also called that I was causing issues and problems where there weren't any, and I was uncomfortable. I was an uncomfortable woman.
Do you think that what you describe is more likely to happen to women as compared to men?
I do. I really do. And I believe that there is a lot of issues in the workplace because women and men are fundamentally like different in the workplace. We have to take into consideration in the workplace things that are happening to us, such as, childbirth, if we opt to have children, pregnancy, menopause is another big one that happens to us, which causes a lot of repercussions in the corporate world, which have yet to be addressed. I've read studies that say that it's costing the UK economy phenomenal amounts of money, and that, suicide rates are at their highest in women in menopausal age. And these are things that are happening to us. We cannot separate them from the corporate environment because we spend most of our time there if we're employed, to be fair. So I think it happens to women a lot more also because of the simple fact that we live in a society where women are told, and young girls are told, to adapt, be pleasant, don't cause a ruckus, don't stand out. adapt. And you kind of, it's all of this kind of narrative that goes on in terms of what we as a society tell women. And when you're then trying to point out things that aren't working in a toxic male driven environment, that's not going to be popular because you're pushing the status quo. You're you know trying to change something. And I think that that's really a difficult position to be in. And I think it happens to women more just because we are accepting of like, okay, this is what this workplace is, and in order to survive in this workplace I have to adapt to this culture. And that is what corporate Stockholm syndrome is in its essence, the belief that we can't change and have to adapt to what is present in our lives at that time.
Is it subtly different though, Jess? Because I'm guessing if somebody can successfully conform, they'll start feeling comfortable in the toxic environment. But it sounds like people recognize I have to conform in order to survive in this particular environment. And that now I don't feel myself. So I'm losing parts of myself. And it feels like that's the war when you talk to people who've gone through similar experiences that you've gone through, that even though they recognize they have to conform, and they're going through the motions maybe of conforming in the workplace for a period of time, that ultimately it just goes against their values. And that's what causes them to leave in the end.
I think it's the survival instinct that kicks in people. I've spoken to so many female entrepreneurs and business owners who have worked in these types of, toxic environments. For instance, the financial world in London, I was speaking to a fellow female entrepreneur not too long ago, and she was talking about the conformism that you had to, as a woman, the way you dress, the way you speak, the way you behave. And she felt like she didn't fit in because she physically didn't look like the women in that, in that financial world that were successful, body shape and the way they spoke and the things that they did and how they dressed and all of those things. So I think at some point for most people you do leave because that survival instinct kicks in, and you'll leave when it is right for you to leave. And whether you start a business or not, you go to another place, that's all up to you. I'm not saying everybody should be running their own businesses, but I think at the end of the day, when it's costing too much on your mental health, then that survival instinct will kick in, and perhaps you'll see things in a different light that you weren't seeing before, that you were buying into this. And sometimes it's inexperience. If you start in a business and it's got a very toxic environment, if you're young and inexperienced, you will buy into that because you have no reference points. So that can also be an issue. So when we wake up, we wake up.